Hello, everyone. My name is Miles from Heritage, and welcome everyone to the Heritage Hemp Podcast, where we interview different founders in the hemp industry and learn from each other while the industry is still very new and going to wherever it will go when the time comes. Joined with me today is Alex Jackson from hclothingco. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hey, Miles, doing well. Yeah, just working on some projects right now, so taking some time out of the day to talk to you. Yeah,
Thank you so much for taking the time. I look forward to this discussion. So,
absolutely.
if you would just like to begin and tell us how you first became interested in the hemp industry, how'd you land on clothing? Because from what I read on your website, you kind of have a lot of different hobbies that bounce very quickly from one to another. So how'd you get to hemp?
Yeah, it's a pretty long story, so if you'll bear with me, I'll try and make it a little shorter. Oh man, let's see. Back in 2018, 2019, I think I was just kind of, you know, couple years out of college, just kind of trying to find the things that I enjoyed doing because it was just working my corporate job 9 to 5 every day. I had about a 2 hour commute total, so it didn't leave much room for me to really enjoy life on the weekdays. And I was just so bored sitting at home having nothing to do. And I was really big into cars at the time, actually. And I had this old 96 Mazda Miata that I was rebuilding with my dad. Um, and my seats were starting to wear out. So I was like, it costs a lot of money to reupholster seats. So maybe I can do this myself. So I bought a cheap leather sewing kit on Amazon for like $100 maybe. It just gives you all of this, you know, cheap tools and whatnot to do. And I first got my start with sewing with leather, actually. Um, and I enjoyed it for a while, but if you've ever tried sewing leather, you know that your fingers get really raw from shoving needles through the small holes that you make. And I just I didn't want to deal with it anymore. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll buy a sewing machine and maybe that'll help. And this was back when I was very naive and didn't know that you needed specialized sewing machines to sew leather. So I bought this nice antique, I guess you would call it, Singer 503A from I think the 60s. Still have it right now. It's sitting right over there. Got it tattooed on me right here too. Um, but that really got me started with sewing pretty much. It did sit around for probably like 6 months to a year before I started my MBA. And when I started my MBA, it was in the sustainability and analytics field. That was like kind of my thing that I was honing in on. So I was starting to have to do a lot of projects, and I was like, well, instead of bouncing all around from place to place, let's just pick like one industry to kind of specialize in throughout my entire MBA course and just stick with it. So I looked up like what are the most wasteful, like harmful industries in the planet, you know? And unsurprisingly, the first was like oil, gas, energy, you know. Um, no surprise there. Number two is transportation, which those kind of go hand in hand, but just like the mass amount of manufacturing and the amount of materials it takes just to make planes, trains, cars, um, yeah, etc., ships. And then third was clothing and textiles in general, and that one really surprised me. So just about through like the first year, I think, of my MBA, which I think took me about 3 years to finish up, I just dove really deep down that rabbit hole that I'm sure you've been down as well. Just like
Yes, I have. Yeah.
how disgusting our clothing industry is today, and just the social issues, the material issues. I think it accounts for like something like 10% of the world's emissions and just as much
Yep.
of the world's waste that's created on an annual basis. And I was just reading through all this and I was like, I don't want to take part in this anymore. I don't want to be a consumer of this anymore. But of course, you can't just stop buying clothes unless I was going to go join a nudist colony, but I wasn't going to go do that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just start making my own clothing. I have the sewing machine that I bought for this hobby that's now a bit defunct. I definitely never reupholstered my car seats. Um, and so around that time, it was 2020, and I as many other of us who had I guess, the privilege of not being in the healthcare industry, which I'm sure was just horrible. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was no longer commuting 2 hours to work, so I had all that time back. And I decided to pick up sewing. And before I did that, I started doing a lot of research in, well, what are the best materials I can use for sewing? Because it's obviously not polyester or anything there. And so I pretty immediately found hemp. Um, I've been a fan of the plant for a long time, not just for its fun uses, but just for its general sustainability and how great it is for the planet. And so again, I just went down the rabbit hole right around that same time during 2020, bought my first bolt of fabric from I think Hemp Traders and made my first hemp shirt, and that was really the start of it.
Wow. Well, that's great to hear. I myself am also a bit of a car nerd, if you will. Um, yeah, I spend a lot of my free time looking at car videos on YouTube. But anyway, that's pretty cool to hear that you kind of just not landed on it, but kind of uh came through it through just like searching, doing research, because that's kind of how got into this industry. I wanted to make my own clothing, and I literally just looked up what's the best fabric to make clothing out of, and hemp was one of the answers, and kind of just went from there, up until today. So that's kind of cool. Um, so is your clothing brand your full-time job, or is it a side hustle at this time, hoping to be a full-time job soon?
Yes, the latter. I wish it was my full-time job. I still have that corporate day job that I was talking about. I've been with my
Hmm.
company since I think 2015. I'm a business analyst for a mortgage company. I manage a
Hmm.
team that builds bots and automates processes. Um, it's decent. I butt heads with management sometimes, but I work in mortgage to pay my mortgage, I like to say.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would absolutely love to take this clothing company full time if I ever had the privilege to do so.
Very cool. And are you working, is everything completely done by you, or do you have any employees of any kind, part-time or temporary or anything like that?
Just a one-man operation at this time. Yep, I typically sign off my emails as a designer, cutter, sewer, dyer. So I do it all from bottom to top. I'm the one packaging up the clothing and shipping it out, putting it in the mailbox every day, or the days that I send them out.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely give a nod to my wife, Ariel. She's definitely the more creative of the two of us. She's a tattoo artist here in Colorado Springs, so she's definitely helped me out on just like some design cues, and I'll walk out with something and be like, that doesn't look right to me. Like, what if you did it like this or like that? It's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you. So yeah, definitely give her some credit there. As far as the day in day out, just a one man operation.
Very nice to hear. It's good to that there's truly businesses these days that are just a one person doing everything, because uh that's really the entrepreneurial spirit, kind of, in essence, just doing everything and grinding. So that's great to hear.
So
Um, and are you still getting your hemp or your raw hemp bundles from hemp traders, or are you getting it from multiple places?
mostly hemp traders, and I've started using Enviro Textiles, located
Hmm.
in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. I've met Summer a few times. She's a wonderful person. Always enjoy reaching out to her and asking questions and just talking shop. So yeah, I'm starting to get some more fabrics from her and looking to get more people as well.
Very cool. I talked with Summer briefly way back when I first started just researching, and I don't I got connected with Summer through a cousin of mine who was in like the cannabis like regulatory policy space, and he knew Summer and he connected me, and Yeah, it's been a while since I've spoken with her, but she was really friendly when I did talk to her. Um, and now for, I guess, the softest of softball questions. Where does the name H Clothing come from?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not really the most creative person in terms of, I mean, clothes are my creation, but outside
Hmm.
of that, I'm not like the most coming up with names person. So I was like, I just want to keep it short. I want to keep it simple. I want to make it something that people can probably remember, not go for something like out of the like crazy. Um, and so I was like, H, hemp, handmade. It's all hemp. It's all handmade. I like to think it's pretty holistic since it's 100% natural. There's no synthetic fibers or dyes or anything in any of my clothing. So I just went with H Clothing Co. And I think that'll give me a lot of room for growth too.
Absolutely. Often the simplest names are the best names. I mean, this is kind of, I mean, the immediate example I came to mind was Standard Oil, John D. Rockefeller. I mean,
Hmm.
simple, straight to the point. It is what it is. It's oil.
Yeah. General Electric.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and since you've been doing this for a few years now, is there any advice you would give to someone that is just starting out in the hemp industry, no matter what avenue they take?
Oh man. Just put the work in, you know. Even having been in business for over 2 years now, there's still weeks that come up and I'm just like, oh, man, is it really like, is it really worth it for how much work it is to just keep going? And sometimes that voice is kind of like the big voice in my head and like kind of pushes down
Yeah.
the little voice. It's like, nope, just got to keep pushing through it and just keep going. And it's going to work out and it's going to be great. And typically when I do push through it is when things kind of, it's always like a test, like if I can
Hmm.
really get through that part, then better things are on the horizon. And it's really interesting because it always works out like that, it seems. So yeah, just keep going, keep pushing. I really hate grind culture, but here I am sitting in it. I probably work like 10, 12-hour days now. Um, but again, a lot of that time is spent sewing, which I just love doing.
Hmm.
So it doesn't really feel like work all the time. But yeah, if you want to do it, just start. Starting is the hardest part, I think. Just get going. Doesn't matter where you are in your journey, just start it up and keep it going.
Absolutely. Perfection. I guess at least for me, it was like, I need this thing to be perfect. I need this thing to be, 100%. No wrinkles, so to speak. But
Mhm.
that's just, unless you were very fortunate, that's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I was reading that some books in particular have kind of shaped your or helped inspire you along this journey, namely the book by Jovan Chouchard, the founder of Patagonia, and also Hempbound by Doug Fine, really kind of helped shape your, I guess, inspiration. Is there any other pieces of art or forms of art that kind of helped you along besides those two books?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of books on fashion that I read through my MBA studies. I know Fiber Shed by Rebecca Burgess is one of the best ones out there. Talks a lot about how the world has just gotten so far away in the past 200 years from really locally made clothing specifically, and it used to be that you didn't like only the truly wealthy people were able to fly in clothing from Paris or England
Mm-hmm.
or that sort of thing. Like most of what you were getting was probably either grown one state over in the cotton fields or the hemp fields, or it was, raised by the sheep farmers like a couple miles away who would then shear their own sheep, spin their own wool, and then, either your parents or someone in town would sit there and sew it up and weave it up. And like and it used to be, that you only had what, 8 outfits, and you would maybe buy one a year if one really wore out, but you would just like go through this repairing and mending pattern, which I think is great, and I think we all need to get back to. I I mean, I'd obviously never lived those days, but it just seems like such a simpler time. And, I, it's fun. It's so funny to me that I got into like the fashion industry because I really loathe the fashion industry on the whole, just like the ever changing, like, this is the new style, this is the new style, this is the new style. It's like, it's
Yeah.
overconsumption, it's overproduction, ever like being on the cutting edge of clothing, like, it's just taste. Um, and I don't know, it never really spoke to me. And I think we just need to slow things down. Anyway, so Fiber Shed really talks about kind of getting back to, kind of that grassroots localization of fiber and clothing production. So I'm actually a part of the Mountains and Plains Fiber Shed now. So it's now this like countrywide, worldwide organization where all these different like 150 to 250-mile radius areas have their own fiber shed. And so I'm connected now with other wool producers, fabric shops, fiber creators, anyone in the fiber industry within a 250-mile radius who has also joined that. I now have that connection and can like utilize those connections and build some relationships. So, really enjoyed that book. And yeah, back to Let My People Go Surfing by Patagonia founder. I never really, like I said, suddenly finding myself as the owner of a clothing company and just kind of like coming to terms with that was like, okay, well, how do I really want to run this thing, you know? And so I took a lot of, I really enjoyed Patagonia's model prior to starting this company, but afterwards, like I really wanted to take that model on and see if I could even improve upon it. So, I do lifetime free repairs on my clothing because I just want to keep it out there. Um, I'm not at all ashamed to say that I definitely got that idea from Patagonia and their repair services that they do. Um, and just his attitude towards his employees is just absolutely incredible, and how the company treats their people and the planet is just wonderful. Um, and then Doug, I love Doug. He's such a great guy. I've gotten to meet him a couple times now. Stumbled upon his book when I was first getting into hemp, and it just like blew my mind. Because I used to be really into science, and I was kind of like a lot of other people, like kind of learning more about mushrooms around the same time. So just like understanding like the soil biology and the microbiology in the soil and how that is helping that is just absolutely incredible. So
Very cool. It's also kind of funny that you went into clothing and you hate clothing, and also there's that famous quote by Yvonne that's like, "I hate business. I never want to be a businessman, but here I am." and look at Patagonia. Um, and do you, going back to your kind of creative process, how do you plan what clothes you're gonna make, and like what does that production process look like?
I wish I could say I had a really good process about it. I really don't. Sometimes I'll just get hit with inspiration and like, I think I need this piece. I want something that kind of feels like this, or I'll have a friend or someone reach out to me and be like, hey, what about like this sort of style? I'll be like, yeah, I think I can see that, and then I'll just, I never went to design school, so I'm self-taught designer. My dad was a carpenter, so I kind of have some understanding of like measurements and how to do all of that. But once it gets to 3D modeling, that
Mm-hmm.
gets really tough for me. So it's definitely been a learning experience, and I feel like I'm still on that learning curve. Um, but right now my most recent design has been a pair of yoga pants, and before that it was kind of like a take on like Thai fisherman pants, where you have the front panel and the back panel and the sides of the legs are open, just really flowy and comfortable. Um, and I don't know if this will actually happen, but I've been tossing around the idea of getting a bit more into the professional apparel of like button ups and suit pants and maybe even vests. I made myself a pair of all of that for a wedding I went to in March 2022. but haven't really gotten much further past that. They're quite more difficult to sew up than your run-of-the-mill t-shirts and shorts. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. And do you keep any inventory on hand, or is everything made to order?
I try to mostly do made to order. I do have some inventory. I'm at a part of a co-op here in Colorado Springs called the hclothingco. That's just a group of about 90 to 120 local makers spread out between two to almost now three shops, who are either like vintage resellers or local artists, local creators. And the owners just kind of got us all together and gave us like a retail location to sell our stuff. So I'll keep that space stocked. And then, I'll travel around to a couple different markets, like the NoCo Hemp Expo. And
Mm-hmm.
that I definitely want to start doing more markets. They're good exposure for my brand, help people know that I'm actually here doing things. Um, so I try not to keep too much stock. So I do mostly do try to, or made to order. Yeah.
Absolutely. And do you find that the fabrics you're using, are they more knit-based fabrics? Are they twills? What type of fabrics and like what type of knits are we dealing with?
So a good mixture of both. Um, my biggest seller is my t-shirts that I make. Well, right now, of course, this is from Hemp Traders. It's a 55% and 45% organic cotton blend. I think it's a 5.8 ounce for those of you who don't care. Um, but really good fabric. I've only just started getting some holes in the 3 to 4 shirts that I wear on an almost daily basis and for the last, 2, 3 years. I definitely put them through the ringer, and I think the holes that I'm getting now are mostly because we got 2 new kittens in January, and they both kind of like climbing me, and so their little claws just start putting holes in the fabric. But I'll just patch them up and keep them going. Beyond that, I really enjoy the 100% hemp linen weave that I get from Hemp Traders as well. I'm making a pair of shorts out of those right now. Let's see. There's 2 front panels that I have in progress right now. So just super lightweight, breathable, nice. I think it's a 4.6 ounce. Um, just really comfortable. And right now, the only fabric or the 2 fabrics that I've gotten from Enviro Textiles are one of them is also 55%, 45% knit. It's a bit heavier. I think I'm going to be making some joggers and sweatshirts out of that coming up here pretty soon. And then I also got I don't think it's quite a twill. I think it's just a plain weave, 55-45 blend. Um, and it's a wonderful fabric. I really enjoyed that one. I've only been able to make a couple things out of it, but it's very.
Well, that's all great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come here on this podcast with me. Is there any parting knowledge you would like to give to the people listening, or anything you would like to plug?
Hmm, that is a good question. Um, I guess the first one is just try and take a look at the contents of your clothing in your closet. Um, understand what they're made out of, understand what they're dyed with. Um, and as far as plugs, beyond myself, if anyone is in the Colorado Springs area, there's a ton of local creators around here. I'm potentially starting up a co-op with me and a good friend of mine, Austin. We're trying to open up some space to allow like new entrepreneurs and people who are starting to hone their craft to give them some like creation room. So kind of like a maker space, but kind of like private areas. So we're hopefully getting that up off the ground here pretty soon. I think that's pretty much it. Thanks for having me on,
Cool.
Miles.
No worries. I'm glad we're able to keep this connection going, and also, uh, you noticed me or recognized me at the Hemp Expo, that was insane. I didn't really know how to react. I was like, what are you talking about? Thank you so much, regardless. So that has been the podcast, and have a great night.
All right. Thanks, Miles. You too. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you as well. Stay in touch.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. Bye.
Bye-bye.